हेलो लर्नर्स, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। तो आज हम पढ़ने जा रहे हैं हमारी एक और स्टोरी जिसका टाइटल है द सेल्फिश जायंट। चलिए शुरू करते हैं। एवरी आफ्टरनून ऑन their way back from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a lovely garden with soft green grass. Over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were peach trees that in spring bore delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in autumn rich fruit. Birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children would often stop playing and listen to them. One day, the giant came back. He had gone to his friend for 7 years. He saw the children playing in his garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in his gruff voice. The children were scared. "My garden is my own garden, and I'll allow nobody to play in it," said the selfish giant. He built a high wall round it and put up a board which read, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." The poor children had nowhere to play. They tried to play in the road, but it was dusty and full of stones. They would wander around the high walls and talk about the beautiful garden inside. "How happy we were," the children said to each other. Then spring arrived. All over the country the trees were full of little blossoms, and birds sat on the trees and sang. But in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. Trees didn't blossom, birds didn't care to sing, as there were no children. The snow and frost were so pleased. Snow covered the grass with her great white cloak, and frost painted all the trees silver. The north wind roared all day about the garden and blew down the chimney pots. Soon hail visited too. He rattled on the roof of the castle and ran around and round the garden. The giant couldn't understand why spring was so late in coming. He hated the sight of the cold white garden, but neither spring nor summer was anywhere in sight. Autumn arrived everywhere, giving golden fruit to every garden except the giant's garden. One morning, suddenly, the giant heard some lovely music. It was a little bird singing in his garden. The giant found it to be the most beautiful music in the world. No sooner the hail stopped dancing, the wind stopped roaring, and a lovely perfume came to him through the window. The giant looked out, and do you know what he saw? The giant looked out, and do you know what he saw? It was a wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept into his garden, and they were sitting on the branches of the trees. The trees were once again covered with blossoms. The birds were flying about, twittering with delight, and the flowers were peeping out through the green grass, and it was a lively scene, but somewhere in the farthest corner of the garden it was still winter. A little boy stood there. He couldn't reach the branches of the trees. He wept as he wandered around. The trees were covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was still blowing and roaring. The tree bent its branches. "Climb up, little boy," it said. But the boy was too tiny to reach the branches. The giant's heart was filled with pity. "How selfish I have been," he said. He decided to put the little boy on the tree and knock down the wall so that the children could once again come and play in his garden. The giant went into the garden, but the moment the children saw him, they were frightened and ran away. Only the little boy didn't run, for his eyes were full of tears and he couldn't see the giant. The giant picked him up and gently put him on the tree. Lo and behold, the tree blossomed and the birds sang. The little boy put his arms around the giant's neck and kissed him. When the other children saw that the giant wasn't wicked, they came back to play. And with them came the spring. The giant knocked down the wall. The whole day the children played with the giant, but the giant couldn't see the little boy he had put on the tree. He asked the children, but they knew nothing of him. The giant missed his little friend. Every afternoon the children played with the giant, but he longed for his first little friend.